grow trees and forests, growing of these young with faith in their growth, in the future growth. We have to be brave in order to believe in this growth. And as it is for the different in their growth, in the future growth, we also have to be brave in order to believe in this growth. Alberto Barbera, with its talent, as it is for the different surprises, sections of La Biennale, also for the film festival, with its director, we give evidence of the fact that dreams can become truth. With the newly awarded being brave protagonists, you cultivate we give evidence of the fact that dreams can being awarded truth. In this workshop, being brave helps you cultivate hope, because this is the heart of the question. This is being awarded. The critical spirit in this workshop helps us to do. We find an expressive, because this is the heart of the question. This is what realization the critical spirit, the poetry of a world. We find an expressive, the contemporary world that is realization impacted by the poetry of a world created by itself. This brave approach to art can respond to our thirst for culture. It can help build a shelter for those who had their homes destroyed by war. And it can provide the truth to those who have only been lied to. Cinema can bring knowledge to people. We have art that can give back conscience to all of us who are like ostrich hiding our head in the sand of indifference. Working with La Biennale, sitting and watching the other making their best efforts for the realization of this Biennale, I heard some rehearsals of, I thought of the verses of a song, Povera Patria, of 1991. And I was surprised by the fact that in 1991, the poet was proposing a clear line, a clear verse in his song. Aren't you troubled by those bodies on earth without any heat? This was written in 1991. He didn't know that in our cell phones, in the information networks, those bodies would become something we are used at, something we have become indifferent to, something we can neglect. I know that in Alberto Barbera's work, we will have a forging of knowledge, a forging of culture, the basis for an active citizenship in our thinking community, with the sky of freedom above us, freedom to allow us keeping our feet, and I'm quoting Raffaele Fior, in order to keep our feet on clouds. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you all.
Allora, grazie Presidente.
Thank you, President. The floor to Alberto Barbera. Good morning. Good morning also from me, and welcome. Welcome back to the annual presentation of the Film Festival program. Every year I promise I will be shorter. I will try this year as well. In order to do so, I will skip the preliminary information. I will spare you the ritual list of numbers on the films that have arrived, the 360-degree selection, the alternation of great masters and emerging talents, and the graphs on gender percentages, which, however, are in the press kit for the fans of these things. So no figures, and let's start immediately with the list of invited films. I would remind you that we have already announced a number of programs, Final Cut in Venice, for example, and the participation of the 3 focus countries in Venice Production Bridge, Morocco, Great Britain, and Chile. We have already announced the project participating in the 9th edition of the Venice Immersive that has become and will continue to be the reference competition in the world for all those who deal with this form of expression, virtual art, and its possibilities to create. From this moment onward, also distribution, because we are starting to put the foundations of a distribution market for immersive Venice. We have already announced the films in the Orizzonti short film section. I take the opportunity to remember the tribute to the film school founded and directed by Jane Campion, A Wave in the Ocean. We will present the 8 short movies produced by the students in this 10-month course. The 8th short film was sent in competition to the Orizzonti Corti. Let us start with the selected movies that have not yet been talked about. Biennale College Cinema. 4 films have been produced this year. In alphabetical order, Agnus Dei by Massimiliano Camaiti, Italy. One Woman, One Bra by Vincent Chogo, a co-production Kenya, Nigeria. Becoming Human, Paul and Lee, Cambodia, USA production. And finally, a film coming from India, Sri Lanka, Secret of a Mountain Serpent. We will see this during the first 4 days of the film festival. Each movie was made by drawing solely on the financial support made available by the grant made available by the Venice Biennale, which consists of 200,000 euros for each movie. Venice Classics, restored films, 19 of them. They have already been announced, but there are also 9 documentaries. The first is Mata Hari, 2 directors, Joe Beshenkowski and James Smith. It is a documentary on the film that David Carradine has been shooting for years and never finished, starring his daughter, Callista. Elvira Notari, Oltre il silenzio, Valerio Ciriaci, a documentary reconstructing the life and career of the first Italian female film director, as well as the most prolific, with a production that counts over 60 feature films and hundreds of short films and documentaries between 1906 and 1930, most of which, unfortunately, were lost. The next documentary is Louis Malle, Le Révolté by Claire Douget, a tribute to the director who we remember for winning the Golden Lion in Venice with Atlantic City, ex aequo with Gloria by Cassavetes in 1980. Memora de los Olvidados, Javier Espada, a beautiful reflection on the second unforgettable film by the young Buñuel. Megadoc, the backstage shot on the set, directed by Mike Figgis, on the set of Megalopolis, the unlucky movie by Francis Ford Coppola. Borman and the Devil, a documentary by David Kitteridge dedicated to an unlucky part of the sequel of The Exorcist. Boorman spent his time on this project that is one of the biggest commercial failures for Warner Brothers, but it is also a reflection on creative freedom and the value of a visionary filmmaker like Boorman, often misunderstood. Holofiction. A few more words to explain this very strange movie realized by Mikhail Kosakowski. It is a 100-minute film essay with music and no dialogue, which reconstructs the history of the Holocaust using only fragments, very short fragments, of over 3,000 films and series released between 1938 and today, which staged the genocide of the Jews. An 8-year work which finally sees the light and questions in a radical way the representability of the Holocaust, which is the great question. Sangre del Toro by Yves Montmayor is a passionate and celebratory portrait of one of the most visionary directors of contemporary cinema, Guillermo del Toro. The Ozu Diaries by Daniel Reim, an exciting reading of passages from Ozu's diaries while the images of his film scroll. Following section, Spotlight, Venice Spotlight, a new title for this section. It is the 5th edition of the competition that awards a prize decreed by the public, supported by Armani Beauty. There are 8 films in the selection. Gira by Shahad Amen from Saudi Arabia, a co-production with Iraq, Egypt, and UK. It is the second film by the director, who won an award at the SIC in Venice in 2019 with Scales. It is a road movie through Saudi Arabia, starring a grandmother and a granddaughter searching the other granddaughter who fled to try and expatriate while they were on the way on pilgrimage to Mecca. Un Cabo Suelto, Daniel Handler, who is a writer and author in Uruguay, well known, a director, writer, and actor, well known in South America. The film takes place on the border between Argentina and Uruguay, and the protagonist is an Argentine police officer who is an Uruguayan police officer who is fleeing his country, pursued by law enforcement. It is not a thriller, but a comedy imbued with subtle humor. Made in EU. Stefan Komandarev, the director, well known in his country, made himself known to us with his previous film, Blaga's Lessons, in Orizzonti in 2023. The new film is set in a mining town where the real emergency is the poverty that reduces the workers of a textile industry of an Italian entrepreneur to accept unfair conditions in order not to lose the only possible job, inspired by real events against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic. Pozzi Ponciroli had made a name for himself for a beautiful Western, Old Harry, out of competition in Venice in 2021. This time, the director sticks to the conventions of gangster movies, but with a radical choice: to tell the story without a single word of dialogue, and he succeeds, let me tell you, in doing this. La hija de la Española, a film co-directed by Mariana Rondon and Marite Ugas. You will remember Mariana Rondon, who presented her first film, Pelo Malo, in 2013 in Toronto, and then won an award at the Turin Film Festival. His third film is the transposition of a novel telling about violence, desperation, and cruelty in a Caracas devastated by the regime. Abrale Cor, a first movie by a Swiss director, Marielle Sguardot. It is the story of a 15-year-old girl, Emma, against the backdrop of the Second World War. She discovered that she is pregnant following a rape and challenges the repressed rural Protestant community to emancipate herself with determination from the moral hypocrisy of the village. Calle Malaga, Marianne Touzani, one of the best directors in Morocco. She was in Cannes with the previous The Blue Kaftan that was also distributed and successful in Italy. It is a comedy that rests entirely on the shoulders of the great actress Carmen Maura. After 40 years spent in the Spanish Quarter, in the Spanish neighborhood of Tanger, the protagonist is evicted by her daughter who needs to sell the house to support her children in Madrid. Determined to take back what is hers, the protagonist goes on the counterattack. Last movie in the section Spotlight is an Italian movie, Daniele Vicari, Ammazzare stanca. Vicari. I never get his name correctly. I apologize with Daniele, whom I have been knowing for many years. An excellent cast, Montesi, Marchioni, Thomas Tabacchi, Rocco Papaleo, among others. It is the true story of Antonio Zagari, the son of a powerful boss of the 'Ndrangheta, who moved to the Varese area, who in the 70s decided to rebel against the criminal destiny traced by his father, refusing to follow his footsteps. And here we are at Orizzonti. Feature films in this section, 19 of them. The competition will be opened by the movie on the opening of the festival, together with the main competition by this movie, Mother, by Teona Strugar-Mitevska, a co-production between Belgium, North Macedonia, Sweden, and Denmark, an international co-production for a well-known director. She was in Venice with the Prisio movie, the unconventional portrait of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, played by Numi Rapace, the result of a 15-year research to restore the truth of a controversial, ambiguous, and not without contradictions character. Divine Comedy, I will not pronounce the title in Farsi, by Ali Asghari, the Iranian director Ali Asghari, who studied in Bologna after his degree in Tehran. He comes back to Venice, where he had already been twice, in 2014 with a short film and in 2017 with a feature film in competition at Orizzonti. Not unlike the previous ones, this film also reflects on what it means to be filmmakers, artists today in Iran, between censorship, bans, bureaucracy, tailings, and police raids. It does so in the form of a comedy, a very enjoyable comedy, by the way. Hiedra, the first film from Ecuador in competition in Venice, the third feature film by the director, who is well known abroad, the dramatic story of a mother looking for the son she abandoned after birth. An Italian movie in Orizzonti, coming back, Carolina Cavalle. She was in Venice with Amanda a few years ago, a unique case of a debut that has obtained wide international distribution. This is a second movie with Benedetta Porcaroli as the protagonist, and there is a lot of expectation for her new movie. Strange River, a debut movie by Jaume Calaret Muxart. I hope I said his name correctly. It is an ambitious first film, a coming of age that tells of a teenager on vacation with a family along the German banks of the Danube, a journey that inevitably coincides with the discovery of himself by virtue of the encounter with the mysterious boy who appears and disappears during the movie. Lost Land, a movie by a Japanese director, the third movie, who has always been interested in cases of people who have emigrated to other countries that are not always friendly with immigrants. In this case, the movie follows the vicissitudes of two children, brother and sister, belonging to the Rohingya minority, who are prosecuted in Myanmar, forced to flee to escape prosecution from Myanmar, trying to reach Malaysia through Bangladesh and Thailand. The film begins as a documentary, but from the moment it takes on the point of view of the children who remain alone at a certain point, it also takes on almost a fairy tale dimension. Grand Ciel, debut film of the Japanese director who studied in Paris, Akihiro Ata. He graduated from Venice in France, in Paris. This is his first film, and it is a strange combination of elements of social denunciation and references to science fiction cinema. Rose of Nevada is a movie by a British author, a science fiction film, although set in the realistic context of a small fishing village in Cornwall with a stellar cast that includes George Mackay and Callum Turner, the most famous, internationally renowned actors, British actors. Late fame, Kent Jones is the second feature film by Kent Jones, former film critic and collaborator of Martin Scorsese. He relies on a consummate producer like Christine Vachon and an exceptional performer like Willem Dafoe to tell the story of a former poet whose work is rediscovered by a group of young New York artists. Milk Teeth is the second movie of a director who made a name for himself in the Orizzonti section a few years ago, in 2022, with his movie To the North. This new film, much more complex and mature, is set in the late 80s, just before the fall of Ceausescu, and take its cue from the disappearance of a little girl to reconstruct the climate of oppression and hypocrisy of the regime. Pin de Farti, with the switch with the initials reversal, is a movie by Alejo Mogillansky. The director is part of the group of independent Argentine artists known as El Pampero Cinema. 3 years ago, we made the acquaintance of the beautiful movie by Laura Citarella, Trinke Lauken. You certainly remember it. She's coming back as an actress here, and the title, with the initial reversed, refers to the theatrical test by Samuel Beckett, Fin de Partie, a starting point for a triple original interpretation. Father is the third movie by Teresa Notova, who won an award for the best film at Locarno in 2022 and won an award for best work in progress at the MIA in Rome last year. I do not want to spoil anything because you have to be surprised by the unexpected narrative of this story. En el Camino by David Pablos, a Mexican director who was in competition at Orizzonti with his first movie, La Vida Después, in 2013. He returns with his fourth film, an original love story set in the most violent part of Mexico between truck drivers and drug traffickers near Ciudad Juarez. Song of Forgotten Trees is a debut movie by a young Indian director, Anuparna Roy, who tells with great delicacy and sensitivity the story of two modern female roommates in Mumbai, forced to measure themselves daily with the irreducible machismo of a society prisoner of behaviors and habits that are difficult to eradicate. The second Italian movie by Laura Samani, Un anno di scuola, based on the novel by Stuparic. While the novel was set in Trieste in 1919, Laura Samani sets it in Trieste in 2007. It is the second movie by Laura Samani after the promising debut of Piccolo Corpo, which was at SIC in Cannes in 2021. Gaston Solniki comes back to Orizzonti for the third time between fiction and the documentary, a Viennese trilogy. Willem Dafoe is the manager of a historic hotel that fights to avoid the closure decided by the new owners of the hotel. Barrio Triste is the first feature film by Stills, a photographer and director of Colombian origin, well known for his music videos, many of which are extremely innovative, many of which were made with Bad Bunny, who also appears in the film. The film is partly related to the late Harmony Korine. From Thailand, Human Resource, the debut film of this Thai director. I will not dare to pronounce his name, Nawapul Tarom Grattanarit. His first movie had been financed by Biennale College Cinema in the first edition of Biennale College. After a few commercial works, Nawapul has come back with a film of great stylistic and formal rigor, which reflects on the problem of the world of work in an advanced capitalist society. The last movie in the Orizzonti section is Funeral Casino Blues, a bizarre movie by Roderick Varich. He's the co-writer of a movie that was in competition in Venice in 2023, The Theory of Everything. This movie, as a first film as a director, is entirely set in Bangkok, a sentimental melodrama, a film of social denunciation, besides and above all, a film of doubles and ghosts in the tradition of the cinema of those countries. This was for the Orizzonti competition, and then we have out of competition, starting with the three short films we are presenting out of competition. One has already been announced. It is the short by Jan Arthus Bertrand that will be screened at the pre-opening of the Venice Film Festival, together with the restoration of Queen Kelly. It is an act of love for Venice and a strong reminder to reflect on the delicacy of its ecosystem that risks disappearing. The second short is by Rachid Bouchareb, co-produced by France. While waiting for a next feature film on the same theme, Bouchareb has made this short, 21 minutes with archive pieces on the nuclear tests carried out in the Sahara Desert by France during the occupation of Algeria, with damage to health and the environment that still remain, and for which France has never acknowledged its responsibility. The last short, Out of Competition, is the latest work by Charlie Kaufman, a peculiar director, a co-production between US and Greece, shot in Athens, How to Shoot a Ghost, a visual and sound poem following the ghost of two young people who had disappeared, a queer Lebanese translator and a half-Irish photographer. In the words of the director, they wander the city together, finding consolation in the difficult beauty of life and its consequences. Series. Out of Competition, 4 series this year. One will only have 2 episodes, Portobello by Pier Giorgio Bellocchio. Pier Giorgio is trying to complete it with Fabrizio Gifuni as a protagonist. The other series instead are presented in full. Un Prophète by Enrico Artal, an 8-chapter series inspired by Jacques Audiard's masterpiece, which won the Grand Jury Prize in Cannes in 2009, and is written by the same screenwriters of that film. Enrico Artal collaborated to the writing of the film, a French production that has been entrusted to an Italian director. He became known in Venice with his first film in 2013, Il Terzo Tempo, and then returned to competition in Orizzonti in 2023 with Il Paraiso, which deserved 2 awards, Best Actress and Best Screenplay. A new series by Hagai Levi. He was in Venice with his previous series in 2021, based on Bergman's Scenes from a Marriage. This new 6-episode miniseries is based on the writing of Etty Hillesum, the young Dutch writer whose diaries, written in Amsterdam in 1941-1942 under Nazi occupation before being deported to Auschwitz, and are among the brightest and most courageous testimonies of the 20th century. Her books sold a lot in Italy. I repeat, the brightest and most courageous testimonies of the 20th century. The latest miniseries produced by Stefano Sollima, Il Mostro, The Monster, 4 episodes, a reconstruction based on the original documents and the investigation in the so-called Monster of Florence case, a cold case, as they say, a detailed reconstruction of involving the first suspects who were condemned and then turned out not to be guilty. Maybe Sollima will tell us something about the follow-up, because it stops at the eve of the coming on the scene of Pacciani. The Italians will certainly remember about him. Another section, a small section, music documentary. Every year, the festival presents at least 1 documentary about a singer, songwriter, or a band. This year we have 4 of them, so we have decided to dedicate an entire day to the relationship between cinema and music. The first is Nino, 18 Giorni, The first is the unconventional portrait of one of the Napolitan singer-songwriters most loved by the public, not only in Italy, Nino D'Angelo. And the documentary was made by his son, Tony D'Angelo. Piero Pelù, Rumore Dentro. Piero Pelù was the frontman of the Liftiba, who had to withdraw after an accident that made him a victim of acufenes. He's subjected to tinnitus and he had to retire from the scene. Newport and the Great Folk Dream is an editing of unpublished archive footage that reconstructs the history of the legendary Newport Folk Music Festival between 1963 and 1966 that came back to success after the movie by James Mangold in his biopic on Bob Dylan. You can see the legendary performance of Dylan himself, legendary performances by Dylan, John Baez, Pete Seeger, John Cash, Peter Paul and Marys, and many other singers more or less famous who made the history of American folk music. This archive footage was saved by a collector, Joey Lauro, but the movie is edited and directed by Robert Gordon. And the last of these 4 documentaries on cinema and music is Nevergreen Francesco De Gregori. He made a series of concerts in a small theater in Milan, 250 seats. The title is Nevergreen because he decided to replay a series of songs from his past that had never been particularly successful and therefore had become nevergreens. And contrary to what he usually does, De Gregori introduces the songs in public and creates duets with other singers, Malika Yan, Elisa, Giovanotti, Ligabue, Zucchero, and Amedeo Bianchi. Out of competition, non-fiction, many documentaries, 15, more than usual, a sign that this segment of audiovisual production is growing, both in terms of quality and attention from the public. And we can only be happy about this because documentaries are really excellent in this section. We start with an Afghan director who lives in the Netherlands today, Abuzar Amini, Kabul Between Prayers, an observation of the daily life of a young Taliban who leaves the countryside to serve at an armed checkpoint in the capital controlled by the Taliban. We discover that his only desire is to be able to become a martyr one day. And his younger brother is educated in the same cause. Ferdinando Scianna, you need no presentation. Ferdinando Scianna is one of the best-known Italian photographers. He was the first to be admitted in the Magnum agency in Paris. The documentary is by Roberto Andò, as Scianna was a source of inspiration for him, as Andò himself was for Tornatore. Mark by Sofia is the portrait of the designer Marc Jacobs. Sofia Coppola has been a friend of his for a long time. She reconstructs his career and the years when both were young, the New York Nights and the street show organized with Spike Jones by Sofia Coppola herself, a very lively documentary. I diari di Angela, capitolo terzo, the third chapter of the reconstruction by Yervan Chanikian with his wife Angela Riccilucchi. She disappeared a few years ago. They portrait and collaborate with the writer Lucrezia Lerro, who gives voice to the intimate writing of Angela Riccilucchi, telling about the artist's poetics and her illness. Janikian points out that it is a political movie. What is personal is political, they used to say in the past. And so it is easy to understand why we can say this about this movie. Ghost elephants, we decided to tribute the Golden Lion for a lifetime achievement to this director who continues to work. We will have the world premiere of his latest documentary, Ghost Elephants, in pursuit of the tracks of a mysterious herd of ghost elephants in the jungles of Angola. As exciting as a thriller, as is often the case for Herzog's documentaries. They seem to be fiction, sci-fi movies.